Well, GDPR stands for the General Data Protection Regulation. It represents one of the most stringent data privacy laws in the world. It went into effect May 25, 2018, but many organizations around the world still struggle to be truly GDPR compliant. GDPR standardizes the data protection regulations across all 28 of the European Union countries and deals with rules of how we create, store, and transmit data amongst businesses. It also covers concepts like personal information or personal data, what we here in the United States refer to as personally identifiable information. GDPR replaced the 1995 European Union Data Protection Directive. Let's talk about why we need GDPR. Well, if you think about the way we live our lives, essentially almost everything that we do revolves around data. The data that we put into our address fields when we go shopping on Amazon, or the data that we have to fill out when we go to the doctor's office or the dentist, filling out insurance, car applications, loans, rental agreements, banking contracts, pretty much anything and everything that we do. Sending pictures to our relatives and loved ones that live far away. All of that essentially is data. And that's where the GDPR comes in. GDPR provides a series of benefits back to the hands of the people, the data subjects that actually own that data. It extends protection of that personal data and gives the rights into how data is going to be handled or controlled back to the data subject. Builds customer confidence between customers who want to do business with organizations and transparency from those organizations on how they're going to handle data. One of the most difficult concepts in cybersecurity is really incorporating security into a business's culture. Well, GDPR helps with that by embedding the concept of privacy and data handling into all aspects of the business. The way they hire employees, the way they train them, all of their business processes are built around privacy and data handling. And it definitely allows companies and businesses to improve their data management process and enhance their data security posture. Make sure that they have an up-to-date real-time inventory of personal data, and reduces maintenance costs to most organizations by reducing unnecessary data. It allows them to implement stringent security measures to help protect that data. I always like to tell my students in all my classes, it can't be stolen if it wasn't there to begin with. Who has to comply with GDPR? Well, GDPR applies to organizations located within the European Union. It also applies to organizations outside of the European Union if they offer their goods or services to or monitor the behavior of European Union data subjects. And this is where GDPR can get really tricky. You don't have to be physically inside the European Union to be subject to this requirement. It applies to all companies that process, hold, or transfer personal data of data subjects residing in the European Union, regardless of where those companies may be located. This is why a lot of companies are unsure whether or not they actually have to comply with GDPR requirements. They may be in the United States, but if they have the data of European Union citizens, they must comply. What happens if they don't comply? Well, let's talk about the penalties. Failure to comply with GDPR can result in some pretty hefty fines. 10 million euros, or up to 2% of the annual worldwide revenue of a business, can be the fine or penalty if they fail to comply. In some cases, it can be even more significant. 20 million euros, or up to 4% of their annual worldwide revenue, whichever one is greater. That can be a pretty hefty fine. Let's talk about penalties for data breaches prior to GDPR and some penalties that we've seen after GDPR. Let's start with Facebook. Cambridge Analytica allowed data to be harvested without permission from millions of Facebook accounts. 87 million users, 70.6 million users were from the United States alone. Most of this data was created to kind of be used for advertisements for political events. However, none of the subjects whose data was compromised gave permission. That's a lot of people. And the penalty for this was only $608,000. Now let's take a look at Google. So this is after GDPR went into effect. $57 million, or 50 million euros, as a fine by France's privacy regulator for a breach of GDPR that was triggered from only 2 complaints. Google did not provide transparency of information and had no legal basis to process user data for advertisements in the way it was doing. And that's what actually got them this fine. That's a lot of money for 2 complaints. Let's take a look at another one. Let's look at Marriott Hotels and Resorts. They were hit with a $123 million fine, 99 million euros, in the UK for a breach of GDPR regulations. Hackers stole 383 million guest records. Of those records, 385,000 card numbers were still valid at the time of the breach. This was a pretty big violation and a pretty big fine. Now let's look at the biggest one so far. British Airways recently was hit with a $230 million fine, or 204 million euros, in the UK for a GDPR breach. It was the largest penalty against a company to date.